Hello, everybody, and welcome to Catalyst of Change. My name is Alexia Cito, and I'm your host, and I am absolutely ecstatic to be with our guest today. We are at the United Nations Committee on the Status of Women in New York, and it's been really exciting, really powerful. And I had the absolute honor and pleasure to meet Bernadette, who's with us here today, CEO of the Veranda Group, in operation for over 14 years now, and works within international trade, economic development, and is just an extraordinary person I've been having the pleasure getting to know. And I'm really excited actually for this conversation to learn more about your journey and all that you do for the world. So thank you for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. I don't often get invited, so it's nice to be here.
Yes. And we're so happy to have you here. And I think, one of the things that really struck me about your presence, was first of all, when we met, we were like, we're both Canadian, which is awesome. And second, and
Portuguese.
Italian,
yes.
Things. So, but also I feel like your humility and your love and commitment, and it really came through in your presence and the way that you were speaking with everyone, how much you held that presence when we were together, and also your history and experience. Like, you have had this huge career with making big change in the world, and I'd love to learn and maybe start from a place, this is Catalyst of Change. It's all about people, catalysts of change in the world. And you are one of those catalysts. So I'd love to learn a bit about, what is it that inspires you to do what you do right now? And what are some of the major themes that you're focused on and what it is that you're doing?
Thank you. That is such a great question and such an important question. For me, I think we all need to be catalysts for change. I think there's a real void in the world for change makers. And I think maybe even there is change in all of us, but maybe sometimes we don't feel empowered or we don't know that we can. I think for me, especially personally, I was always very shy. And now people say, oh, you're so gregarious. You're such an extrovert. And the reality is I did the test and I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. And so I had to kind of become an extrovert, work outside of my own element, so in order to get the job done. And I think for some of us that maybe don't realize that we can be a catalyst for change, it might be a little bit of that where you just don't have the confidence. And I developed my confidence, my self-confidence late in life. And I think it was as a result of 19 years working in the telecom industry. It was a male-dominated industry, probably still is, but I left the industry. I took an early retirement package, I'm going to say at the end of 2004, and after 19 years, and I didn't realize until I left that it was such a male-dominated world and very traditional, but not a bad thing. I had a wonderful career there and I want to do something different. I initially thought, well, I'll plant a vineyard and just find out what my purpose is in life. I did plant the vineyard, but it died while I was in, I think, Guatemala or El Salvador. So quickly I realized that I'm probably not ready to just stay, home-based and figure out what I want to do. I probably just need to jump into it. And so I did. I started, I can't remember now whether I started in Ireland or I started in Guatemala. I think I started in Guatemala. And I worked for, I was recruited to work for them and I said, okay, yes, I will. And I opened up an office for them in El Salvador. And then I came back and I got pulled into Ireland and I loved that and working in the financial sector. And then I finished up there and I ended up working maybe with an e-learning company. So I had this kind of 6 years of just figuring out what I wanted to do organically. So without that structure of like, well, I'm going to take an early retirement package, I'm going to plant a vineyard, and then I'm going to figure out what I wanted to do. So I figured out what I wanted to do just by doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And what I learned was that I created a network internationally, and that I was well positioned to work in international business. And I started my company, and I was just trying to figure out, what the company was going to be. And I got recruited by a government in Canada to attract investment into the region. So every region around the world promotes themselves and looks for big companies or little companies to invest in that region, create a presence there. And I did that. And then I also worked with government to lead delegations of our own companies into new markets, to enter new markets, to export their wares. And so in doing all of that, I met a lot of people, and I really figured out what I wanted to do. And it's none of that, but it's all of that. So what started with government ended up being that I really missed industry. So I wanted to have them at the table. And then I realized that I'd never worked, if you look at public and private sectors. So I'd worked government and I'd worked in industry, but I'd never worked in academia. So I brought them into the mix. And now I follow a methodology called the Quadruple Helix model of innovation, where we have everyone at the table. And the premise is that you collaborate to innovate. So everyone's at the table, government, industry, academia, and civil society, to understand where the need is and how we can affect change together.
Wow. And for someone who's been through this for so many years and seen so many different models, what do you see as the impact of using something like the Quadruple Helix model and having everyone at the table?
It's really that there are first of all, there's no hierarchy. So in trade and investment or in economic development, usually economic development is synonymous with government. So I have an economic development organization, but it's not government. So I started thinking, well, why does it have to be government? Why does, I understand that government provides the incentives for companies to invest in their jurisdiction, and they also provide incentives to local companies that are looking to export and to enter new markets. But it doesn't all have to be led by them, and it doesn't all have to be on their shoulders. So I started thinking and using this reverse engineering model. So why don't we start with academia? And if you have, I would do some work with the University of New Brunswick. So if you have a university like the University of New Brunswick with 20 centers and institutes, what are they each doing that no one else is doing that sets them apart from other researchers? And who are they working with that we could replicate that around the world? So if they're building a digital twin for a small company in New Brunswick, can they build that digital twin for companies in Turkey or for companies in the US or wherever? And then that brings the business into the region. So it's kind of reverse engineering in the fact that it's not driven by government, it's driven by academia. It can also be driven by industry. It can be driven by anybody. And so having a model like the Quadruple Helix model, basically everyone has the same authority at the table. So it's really a democracy. And I like that. I like that everyone has a voice, and no one is more important than anyone else, and they work together and they get there faster and better.
Wow. It sounds very cyclical.
Yeah.
And in many ways also ancient, like so many ancient traditions and communities had everyone there making the decisions, having the input, sharing together. So it's really powerful. And imagine if more and more organizations were to develop this kind of model, the impact that could have for so many people.
Yeah, I think you're right. I believe you're right. I know you're right because um, it is about going back to the basics. Even if you look at where we're focused on clean tech, we're focused on agriculture and feeding the world, agri-food. And so, farm to table, all of those things are going back to the basics. We're focused on the trades. So I think that all makes sense. And I'd like to see more of that. One of the benefits as well is that we get to be, like, if you have an organization like the Veranda Network, we get to be not partial, like, kind of unbiased in that we're not representing a government, we're not representing a company. Everyone is on the same agenda, and they might have different roles within, but yeah.
And what do you feel like is part of your mission or path or purpose?
Well, the purpose came after I figured all that out. It came in 2017, I went on a personal mission because I'm from Portugal. I have an enormous, I won't say guilt, but I do have an enormous debt to pay. That's how I feel, given the atrocities that were committed by the discoveries and the colonization that happened around the world. And I started on that path. I went to Mozambique, one of the former colonies of Portugal, and tried to understand, like, what are the challenges and how can we do better to work together. And I also went to Tanzania, which was not related to Portugal in its history, but had also been colonized and also had some of this, same concerns and issues moving forward. Mozambique in particular is the 8th poorest country in the world. And it just seems a little bit unfair. And so I started developing this dream, which I ended up launching officially, during the pandemic or just before the pandemic. And it's called One World, where everyone is on the same playing field, regardless of where you were born or, your race, your religion, the color of your skin, your gender. So I started really discovering that is my purpose. After 2017, I came back like a changed person. I thought, oh my goodness, like I had buckets of water poured over my head to wash my hair for 2 months. Like it was different living conditions. And I felt that I really understood that life is not fair and it's not equal and people don't have access to the most basic rights. And I launched my social impact arm within the Veranda Network called One World. And in that world, everyone is the same. Nothing matters in terms of anything but moving forward and being the catalyst for change. So everyone gets to be that. And we're not there yet, obviously.
Yeah.
As we're sitting here 30 years on the 30-year plan, 5 years left, and we're not anywhere near where we should be. Yeah. So we have a lot of work to do, but I think everyone can partake in it, and everyone has a role to play.
Absolutely. I'd love to hear a little bit more about One World, like how you're actioning this vision and what the focus is. So powerful.
Yeah, the action is really important to me because I think we talk a lot about what needs to happen and what we'd like to see happen, but unless you take that baby step, it doesn't have to be like a full drawn out plan. It can just very well be a starting point, and you might realize that, okay, that did not work. I have to go back to the drawing board, or, I missed there's a big void, a big gap that I missed. And you kind of go back to the drawing board and you add to it, or you do it entirely different. You pivot or what have you, but you do something, and you figure it out as you go. And I grew up, believing that and being told that a third of your success is having a plan. I believe that, but I also believe, and a third is implementation. So I believe all of those things end to end have to happen. But I also believe that you can have a baby plan.
Yes.
And as long as you just do it, just do something, that eventually you'll come full circle. You'll be there quicker, in a way, closer to it. Yeah.
I want to touch on that a little bit because you mentioned that towards the beginning and it really resonated, which is that it actually came through in the action. It came through in the doing it, this mission that you're on and this whole vision of the organization. So could you speak a little bit to like what is that like? Because that takes courage. That takes like persistence. That takes like stepping into the unknown and like we were talking about going out of the comfort zone and especially for the listeners and viewers, like, what is that like for you being on that journey where it's unfolding? And in some ways, like, if you read like Lao Tzu or like all these like ancient sages, they say like the way appears as you walk, or there's different ways of saying it. So for you, in a very tangible way, like through your business and your service and everything you're creating, like, what was that journey like to just do that?
Well, it's scary, but I don't think it requires as much courage as people think it does. And I think that the word courage is maybe misplaced in our vocabulary. I think we use it randomly, almost too much. And there are people that have courage. I don't see myself as one of them. I don't think that what I've done, if anything, has required courage. I was afraid, yes, but I think I'll leave the word courage to people that have really had to have courage. And so for me, it was not as difficult, I guess, as I didn't have as much invested in it. It wasn't a do or die for me. I think a lot of times that you get to and that you have to express courage, it's a matter of life and death. Yeah. And so for me, I was very fortunate. I've had a privileged life. And if I failed at it, it wasn't the end of the world for me. So I took those risks. I'm a little bit risk averse anyway, as I found out in my life. But yeah, like there was no risk really. There was nothing really to lose. So it was easier for me to do it. And I think I say think a lot, but I believe that you just think like the path just shows itself. It does reveal itself as you go. And for me, meeting people that were of like mind, I think when I met you, it was like, we've since discovered that we're both Sagittarians. Yeah. Yes. It was like there was just something pulling me to you. And I believe it's because we share in some of those attributes, I'll call them. So I met Nelson Mandela's great grandson in Washington D.C. when he was a visiting scholar at is it George Mason? That's in Virginia. Anyway, so we were both invited to speak at the Africa Trade and Investment Summit, and it was all about Africa, but not in Africa. So for Africa, but not in Africa. So we had this first inaugural summit, and we were both speaking. I actually ended up, and these are decisions that you make on the spot because you don't have time to think about it. You're just doing it. And those little things are what kind of got me here. So I ended up, there were other Canadians at that event. And so I ended up asking one of them that had done some work in Africa, which I had not done other than my volunteer humanitarian work. And I asked him if he would speak to the audience. I introduced him, and then I quietly snuck out of the room and went to Dr. Mandela's presentation, which was 2 doors down at the same time. And that, I didn't know that was happening. I knew that there was a Mandela on the speaker circuit there on the program. I had not met him. I had not reached out to him, but I wanted to hear what he had to say. And I wanted to find out if now I know that Mandela is a tribe name. And if you have Mandela as a last name, you are related to Nelson Mandela.
Mm.
So I went to his presentation and I was just so moved. And I came out of my comfort zone again and I asked him if he was related, and he said yes. And to make a long story short, I hosted him in Canada. I brought him to New Brunswick, then to Toronto, then to Portugal, and we've become friends. And I've learned so much from him, even though he's younger than my children.
Mm.
And he has since received his PhD and invited me to attend the graduation ceremony from Nelson Mandela University in South Africa. And of course, it was 5 a.m, but I would not have missed it for anything in the world. And I think those things are what end up being what we can attribute any change to, or any contribution, or even our purpose. Even our purpose is made up of all those little things, the people that we meet. And I believe the same with you, Alexia, that we will make change together.
Mm.
Change by yourself is boring and not so effective.
Yes.
But imagine change together, like everyone at the table. It all kind of circles around to the same methodology that I use for my business. It's the same for life. Have everyone at the table. It's a matter of inclusion.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. It always reminds me of one of our proverbs that we always refer to with the Love, Peace, Harmony Foundation and just our teams and everything is the African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. Yeah. And Ubuntu, of course.
Yeah, I was going to say, Ubuntu is something that, sits in the back of my head, back of my brain every day, that I am, because we do things together.
Yes. Yes. And what has it been like? Someone like Nelson Mandela is like such an embodiment, of this. And here we are at the United Nations and they've got that statue of him, with his hands, and you're working with his great grandson. And so what has that been like, to be connected with such an icon?
Yeah, well, it's funny because for a long time, decades, I have always been fascinated by Nelson Mandela. And even though I wasn't, I'll call it in that line of work, I wasn't really, focused on change or, impact. And maybe those are catchwords but at the time I just wasn't thinking that way. You just go through your emotions, you do the best you can. But I was telling you, I think, about my bucket list. Yes. So in 2013, I had a milestone birthday. So I made up a bucket list, and on my list was not the standard, jump out of a plane, but it was, number 1, meet Nelson Mandela. And my birthday's on December 6th, so that was the day I was about to start in 2013. I'd already compiled my my bucket list, and on December 5th, Nelson Mandela passed away. So I left him on my list. I crossed off other things. Not all of my list was crossed off, but I did cross off most of it. But Nelson Mandela, number 1, was never crossed out.
Wow.
And so 5 years later, he would have turned 100 in 2018. He was 100 years old on July 18th. And that statue was donated, actually, that bronze statue at the UN was donated by South Africa for his centenary celebration. So in 2017, when I had met Sibulela Mandela, he said that there was going to be a celebration in South Africa and whatnot. And I started thinking about that in 2018. And I started thinking about my One World social impact arm. And that's when I really started, really kind of delving into it. And people thought, what's your, fascination with Nelson Mandela? Especially now that he's not here. And I said, well, now is the time. Actually, first of all, I've been fascinated with Nelson Mandela for many years, decades, and quietly. And he quietly inspired me. Never met him. He never knew he inspired me, but he inspired many people. And that was all building up. And so in 2018, after I met Madiba in Washington, he called me maybe 6 months later and said he was going to come to Canada on an international PhD program. And I said, well, would you like to come and visit? And he said, yes. So I thought, this will be great. I'll have him for a week and we'll go and, visit all the sites and take him around New Brunswick, which is such a beautiful province. And then I woke up one day and I'm like, what am I doing? Like, this is Nelson Mandela's great-grandson. Why am I not rolling out the red carpet? So eventually we had 8 days with government, no industry, but government and civil society mostly, and academia. All he wanted was, maybe we can throw in a lecture. I'm like, yeah, for sure. We can get a lecture at UMB. And we ended up getting a lecture at UMB, 2 lectures at UMB, having a panel with Indigenous Vice President of Indigenous Affairs at UMB. We had so many powerful events in those 8 days. He read to children, went to the museum, had events everywhere, met all the heads of state in the province, toured the legislature. He had so many gifts from the province and from people in it that we had to get him 2 extra suitcases to go back to South Africa with. But that's where it started. And we've been working together ever since. I just saw him in Qatar at Web Summit, and where he was speaking. Mostly he speaks on human rights and social justice and the legacy of Nelson Mandela. And I'm always in the front row, cheering him on and, making an impact together. It's no fun unless you're doing it with someone.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. That's so profound and powerful. And I feel like your love for Mandela was very intentional.
Yeah, that's a good way I've never thought of it that way. But I think just like earlier when you were speaking about the song.
Yeah.
And I thought, gosh, that is so intentional and so full of passion and love. And I think that's a prerequisite. Like, that's it. It's that simple.
It is, yes.
It's like, be intentional, be authentic. It has to come from you. You can't fake it. It's not the type of thing that you fake. Not at all.
Yeah. But you can practice. That's what I like to think. Because sometimes if we spent our whole life, I don't know, it's just coming to me in the moment, but if we spent our whole life being in like a certain kind of headspace, even when we start trying to shift that consciousness or shift our heart, maybe we've spent all of our life focused on ourselves, and then we just hear this podcast or we have something happen. And we're like, oh, I need to do something for someone else. I need to get out of my shell. Like, I need to get out of my comfort zone. It can almost feel sometimes like we are faking it. In a way, like I've experienced that myself at times where I feel almost like it's authentic and it's me. Or maybe it's like it could be a fear or something. Like something could feel like, oh, but do it anyway.
Yeah.
If it's for someone, if it's good, if you're making a difference, even if it feels like a little bit awkward or uncomfortable or but like you said, it resonates when you're faking it.
Yeah.
When someone's faking it. But push yourself to do something new.
Yeah. I think as long as you stay true to who you are and that you do things with intent, like good intent.
Yes.
It doesn't really matter what shape it takes. It will be the right thing to do, and it will have the right impact. So if that's called faking it, then do it.
Yeah.
Right? So that expression, fake it till you make it, I don't think I agree with that, but I do think that it's okay to just, step out of your comfort zone. And yes, there will be fear, but there'll also be like great sense of accomplishment.
How was your journey in Qatar?
Fabulous.
Wow.
This was my second year. And I love seeing, because, we have impressions, or we think we know, but really we don't know anything until we get there and we see it and feel it and live it for ourselves. And in the Middle East, I'll only speak for myself, but women, women are actually more empowered than we might have a perception of.
Yes.
And I met some amazing women in Qatar. And I also met some amazing people, not from Qatar, but that have a genuine interest in working with Qataris. And I forget what the number was, but they released it after the event, so maybe last week, where they might have had 1,500 companies set up a presence in Qatar. So register their business from outside of Qatar.
Wow.
Yeah, just during those 4 days. Wow. So yeah, it's a fascinating country. I think we've always grown to see Dubai as the center of the Gulf. And Qatar is all that we think it is. It's beautiful. It's also a little bit of what we don't know about. They have New Dubai and Old Dubai. But in Qatar, they just have Qatar. They just have people doing what they do. And Dubai, I found, was a little bit, I had not expected. I just expected a lot of wealth and a lot of high rises, and it has all of that. But there's also, in Old Dubai, people living not by the same, not with the same means. And so there is a little bit of a division there in terms of who is living in Dubai. And in Qatar, I didn't see that. I just saw everyone's living together and moving forward together.
Wow.
So I love that.
Wow. It's powerful. And I love what you share about the women empowerment. I think that's so important because there's so much misconceptions in media, especially Western media. And so it's amazing to hear from people who actually have that experience, And I recently, when we were in London recently, had this amazing talk with a doctor who had just been awarded. There was an award. The first awardee was the ruler of Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
The second awardee was her. And she's this extraordinary woman, like businesswoman, works in sustainable development, all kinds of different industries. She's just extraordinary. And she was sharing all about the women in the Middle East and how many, of course, not all, but there are certain aspects of different societies where there's this empowerment, where women are empowered. And I thought that was really fascinating.
Yeah.
So I love you carrying that.
Yeah, I think, perception is not always reality.
Yep.
As I say. And, Saudi Arabia is another one. We all have our perceptions of what Saudi Arabia is and isn't. And I think that they're really making headway. In fact, their chair, the chair of the Commission on the Status of Women, is from Saudi Arabia. First time ever.
Wow. Yes.
And That's fascinating in itself. They have a big presence here at the UN, as you know. And you'll see a lot of women from Saudi Arabia that feel empowered to speak out, that it isn't at all what we think it is. And perhaps some of that has been as a result of change and hard work to make it happen. And maybe we just kind of assumed that for the past decade, it was still the same, but they've been quietly coming into their own. And now it's kind of the place to be. And I might try it next year.
Yes. I might join you.
Yes, I would love that.
You might have an extra episode from Saudi. So
Yeah.
watch out, world. Yes. So, okay, we have one final question that we ask all of our guests.
Oh.
And it is, if you could be a catalyst of change for one thing in the world right now, what would it be?
Poverty. It's a tie between poverty and peace in a sense. But the reality is that with poverty, you will not achieve peace, in my opinion. So that's why poverty, for me, is the most important. I want everyone to have access to not just exist, but to live. And there are people that are not able to live. They're not able to eat. I was not expecting that question, and I certainly wasn't expecting to get emotional right now, but that's, thank you for asking. It reminds me of the importance of making sure that everyone has food and security and health. Those are the pillars. They're also the greatest challenges that we're faced with.
Yeah. I feel your love and your heart and compassion. We need more of that in the world. We really do, to get out of our bubbles.
Yeah.
Like not even just our comfort zone. It's like get out of our bubbles. We were talking today when I showed you anyone watching Masa, who's from Uganda, who's one of our collaborators. He has a Together We Love orphanage, and we work together, and he's an amazing soul. But he had messaged me something very simple, like we were talking about video we were creating. He's like, oh, I'll record this tomorrow because the electricity's off and the candle went out. And we're sitting in this big building with all these lights and, anything at our fingertips. And it's like, we forget that there's billions, not millions, billions of people. Like we think we're in, here we are in the 21st century, or whatever century. This is what it's like. No, there are people living in like 100 BC.
Yeah.
Like looking for food out in the forest. Like no washroom, no water, no electricity.
Yeah.
Like and literally, unless we expose ourselves, especially in North America where we are, and it's like we forget, and it's not just abroad.
No.
It's right here at home.
Yeah. If you look at the indigenous communities and their lack of clean water.
Yes.
It's fascinating, not in a good way, but it is fascinating that we do. And I don't think we have to have guilt about it. I think guilt is just, it's something that I always had, but I don't think we need to have it, and nor should we have it. I think for me, guilt is one of the things that does no good. So I think we really need to just say, okay, what can we do to make a small difference? For me, that's where we really need to invest our energy.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you for clarifying that too. Because sometimes I get passionate. I'm like, we need this. But it's
No,
true. It's not
but-
about the guilt. It's about the action. It's like
Yeah.
taking that awareness.
Yeah.
What can I do with this awareness? Like your heart, your compassion, the tears. It's like because you care.
Yeah.
Because you care.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't, I don't really endorse, crying on, podcasts, but
I do endorse it. I do. I do endorse it.
But I wasn't really saying, I wasn't being critical of you in terms of guilt. I don't even think you said the word, but I was just reminding myself.
Yeah.
Because I often feel guilty that I have this or that.
Yeah.
But it's just such a wasted emotion for me.
Absolutely.
And so I just try to focus on, okay, this is what it is, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so we can make a difference in some small way. And that's where I choose to spend my energy.
And you're making more than a small difference, might I say, which is such an inspiration. And, when you said we're going to make change together, I really felt it. And I'm excited.
Oh, we're going
see.
to. Yeah.
So everyone needs to stay tuned
Yeah.
for what's to come. And I want to thank you so much for joining us and for being such a catalyst of change for so many years and just knowing we're just getting started.
Thank you, Alexia. I'm encouraged by having met you and inspired by it, actually, and looking forward to building a plan that we will not follow, but it will kind of give us like a little propel us forward, and then we'll change it as we go, and we invite everyone along for the ride.
Exactly. Absolutely. So we want to thank you for being here and also welcome you to share in the chat and the comments your experiences of our conversation, your thoughts, your inspirations. What are you going to go act out in the world? What are you already doing? What resonated? What didn't? All the things. And you can like, comment, and share if you wish. And we want to invite you to connect with Bernadette. We'll share all our information below. Again, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
Thank you. We want to welcome everyone to continue being catalysts of change in your lives, communities, and the world. And we will see you in the next episode.